Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Queen Elizabeth, A Day in Her Life. Today we're going to look at a relationship between Queen Mary and King George V. Mary was supposed to marry George's older brother, Prince Eddie, but Prince Eddie died of the Russian flu only in his 20s. Queen Victoria played matchmaker, and she liked Mary, who was called May at that time, and thought she was level-headed, and so she got her grandson George to propose to Mary. So let's see how they got along with each other. And the information will come from the book Matriarch, Queen Mary and the House of Windsor by Anne Edwards. And this is a great book, and it brings these historical people to life. And let us find out more about these fascinating people. So Prince George was sought after. A lot of women in high society felt that George would be a good catch. He was to be king, so Mary, and that was Mary's or May's mother, kept reminding the Windsors of Mary's sacrifice and loyalty to the family. She had also endeared herself to the public when she was engaged to Prince Eddie, who was Prince George's brother. May, as her family called her, wasn't sure how George felt about her. He had a deep affection for a lady named Julia Stoner, but she had married the previous July. George had been in the Navy, and except for his Julia and his mother, he preferred the company of men. He didn't care for socializing. So George and Mary started to spend time with each other. George was a conservative dresser. He dressed with a dapper air, and he had a jaunty walk. And Mary began to read to him for hours and helped him to perfect his French. He had a stamp collection, and they would look at it together, and he would tell her about certain stamps, and she would explain the background of the country. They were both the same height, but her hairstyle made her appear taller. They would walk around the grounds of the Compton place, but Mary didn't want to ride because she never trusted horses and only mounted one when forced to. It was after a while that George finally began to notice Mary. He was very upset when his brother died, and they were very close. So what did Mary think of George when she first got to know him? According to the book, Mary may not have been in love with him at this time. She found he was immature and independent, and his good traits were that he was dutiful, conservative, and straightforward, and these were traits she admired. And then the negative one was he might be dull, but she knew that she was somewhat stiff and private and not too affectionate. The only problem they were having was with George's mother. The Princess of Wales was possessive of her only surviving son. She realized that she was in danger of losing him because he was in love with May. When George was sent to Germany for further studies, his mom, the Princess of Wales, sent him letters saying, "The bond of love between us, that of mother and child, which nothing can diminish or render less binding, and nothing and nobody can or shall come between me and my darling Georgie boy." The Prince of Wales wanted to prevent the marriage, and the Queen felt that there was something dreadful would happen if he did not marry. Well, Christmas time, George gave Mary a beautiful brooch which made Mary feel hopeful that an engagement was to come. Then it became a year since the death of Eddie, and George was asked to go to Sheen, the home of his sister. On the evening of May the 2nd, Prince George dined with the Tecks, and the next afternoon Princess May was to be a guest for tea at Sheen, and George's sister suggested that George take Mary outside to see the frogs in the pond. Princess May noted in her diary, "We walked together in the garden, and he proposed to me, and I accepted him. I drove home to announce the news to Mama and Papa, and Georgie followed. He went back to Sheen after dinner, and we telegraphed to all the relations." Well, May's mother started to spread the news, and then she worried that she should have waited till the Queen had consented, and luckily she did. The next day, the newspapers reported the engagement. George's mom was in Athens and didn't seem to be in any hurry to go home. She wrote a letter wishing them happiness and God's blessings, and she also mentioned that Eddie's spirits were watching over them and happy for their happy future. And she had gone also to Venice, and she did make it home 2 days before the wedding. She seemed to turn cool toward May, I should say. She left May out of the social activities she had with her son. To Princess Alexandra, Princess May's new engagement made a travesty of the first. So George seemed to have a good sense of humor. There was a story in the Star newspaper that claimed that Prince George had been wed to the daughter of an English admiral, and he had 3 children with her while he was in Malta. He laughed and told May We can't get married after all. I hear I've got a wife and 3 children. So the day of the wedding, the bride was in her room, and earlier she had written Prince George a penciled note. I should much like to give you a wedding ring if you will wear it for my sake. I therefore send you herewith with 1 or 2 to try on for size. Let me have the one you choose at once, and I will give it to you in the chapel. What a memorable day in our lives this will be. God grant it may bring us much happiness. I love you with all my heart. Years forever and ever may. So it seemed that he had worked his charms on her. Well, it seems as though George worked his charms on May, and she found herself in love with him, and I think George felt the same way about her. After the marriage, they went to live at Sandringham. May found out that George's family then were close and didn't take much to outsiders, and this was especially true for her mother-in-law and her 3 sister-in-laws. Princess May was interested in music, literature, and science, and they weren't. The house they lived in was almost in Prince Alexandra's garden, and the quarters were cramped. She didn't have any privacy, and everything she did was reported back to the Princess of Wales. Examples that were told was when May rearranged the furniture in her sitting room. Another, when she planted a small garden without permission. Everything had to be reported to the big house. Where she and George lived was once a cottage to accommodate male guests who came to shoot at Sandringham. It was too small to use as a royal residence, and it was called Bachelor's Cottage. Princess Alexandra didn't do much to design or decorate it, but she made sure that it was hidden from view of the main house, and she did that by planting laurels and rhododendrons, which made a dense thicket. And this also made the cottage dark. The Prince of Wales changed the name to York Cottage when he gave the cottage to George as a wedding present. The cottage was dark and it was hard to keep heated, and it also had a primitive plumbing system and not too many bathrooms. All the bedrooms were almost cubicle, and there was a beautiful fireplace, though, with a dark wood overmantel and the entry hall. And George, he had a smoking room, library, and a gun room. They all had an upright piano, a few cozy chairs, a pretty table or 2, and they had some potted palms. The dining room was large, but Mary May had brought her collection of pet birds, so part of that dining room became an aviary. The kitchen was right at the dining room, and a new wing was created for male servants, and the upstairs contained rooms for the female servants. And then Mary realized George's limitations. Nothing had prepared the Duke of York for his new responsibilities. His education ended where it should have began. John Gore, a biographer, said that he was below the educational and perhaps intellectual standard of the ordinary public school-educated country squire. Well, Princess May had a better education in English history, and helped him to fill the gaps in his education. Princess Mary became Duchess of York, and the world was hers. Well, I'm going to stop here and continue with more interesting information about Queen Mary and her family that I found out in the book The Matriarch by Anne Edwards. So it's interesting to find out more about Queen Mary and how she got married and became a queen. And the next video will be about Queen Mary and how she was a mother, how she was as a mother, along with other information. If you enjoyed the video, if you could give it a thumbs up, it would be greatly appreciated, and it lets me know if I'm on the right track. And if you haven't clicked on the notification bell, if you could do that, it'll let you know whenever a new video comes out. And if any of you haven't subscribed, if you could subscribe, that would really help me out. And I appreciate to all the people that have subscribed. It means a lot. So I hope that everybody's been having a good day. And tune in again soon for another episode of the Queen Elizabeth, A Day in Her Life. Thank you. Bye.